Communism and Marxism fail because they fundamentally ignore human nature. At the core of these ideologies is the assumption that people can be reshaped into cooperative, selfless agents working entirely for the collective good. This idea, though noble in theory, overlooks the deeply ingrained reality of individual self-interest, which is a natural driving force behind human behavior. People are not simply cogs in a machine that can be reprogrammed to act according to a central plan. They are complex individuals with personal desires, ambitions, and goals that often conflict with collective ideals. In any society, individuals naturally seek to improve their own lives, to pursue their own happiness, and to protect their own interests. This drive isn't necessarily selfish in a negative sense. It's a basic aspect of survival and personal fulfillment. Communism and Marxism, however, require that people act purely in the interest of others, disregarding their own individual needs and motivations. This creates a fundamental disconnect between the ideals of the system and the actual behavior of people, which leads to resistance, inefficiency, and ultimately failure. The failure to acknowledge self-interest and individual variation leads to the attempt to impose a level of uniformity that doesn't match the reality of human nature. No matter how well-intentioned, any attempt to enforce a collective identity that suppresses individuality is bound to face resistance. People will always seek to express their uniqueness, whether through their career choices, lifestyle, or personal values. The systems of communism and Marxism fail to recognize the powerful human drive for autonomy, and by trying to suppress it, they create an environment of dissatisfaction, resentment, and rebellion. This denial of human nature is what makes communism and Marxism so disastrous. They attempt to force people into molds that simply don't fit, assuming that everyone can and should contribute in the same way. But in doing so, they ignore the reality that people are motivated by deeply personal reasons, not abstract notions of collective benefit. This is why these systems inevitably fail. They are based on an idealized view of human behavior, one that doesn't hold up when tested by the complexity and reality of human life. Communism and Marxism fail because they seek to impose a level of uniformity that is unnatural for human beings. These ideologies advocate for complete equality in all aspects of society, which sounds appealing at first glance. However, when you try to enforce this kind of uniformity across diverse individuals, it quickly breaks down. Human beings are not interchangeable or one size fits all. They are unique with differing skills, passions, values, and capabilities. The idea of forcing everyone into the same mold leads to a stifling of creativity, personal expression, and individual growth. People are not robots designed to serve a singular purpose, and trying to make them so disregards the very essence of what it means to be human. In any free society, people naturally pursue different paths based on their interests, strengths, and inclinations. These differences are not only inevitable, they are valuable. A society thrives when it allows people the freedom to pursue their individual goals, whether that's in the arts, sciences, business, or any other field. Attempting to strip away this diversity and impose an equal outcome for everyone stifles the very forces that drive innovation and progress. It assumes that one person's version of success or happiness is the same as everyone else's, which is simply not true. Moreover, the imposition of uniformity disregards the personal drive that motivates individuals to excel. In a society that values equality above all else, the incentive to work harder or improve oneself is diminished. If everyone is guaranteed the same outcome regardless of effort, why would anyone push themselves to do better? The result is not a utopian society where everyone is equal, but a stagnant one where mediocrity reigns because no one is incentivized to strive for excellence. The failure of communism and Marxism to appreciate the complexity of human differences and individuality is one of the key reasons these systems ultimately collapse. They cannot force people to conform to an ideal that denies their inherent nature. Communism and Marxism fail because they place too much trust in the ability of a central authority to control and manage every aspect of society, a structure that is inherently inefficient. These ideologies assume that a single entity or governing body can manage the complexities of a nation, its economy, and its people with precision, overseeing every decision in order to maintain equality and uniformity. However, this centralization of power ignores the fundamental problem of human limitation and the complexity of knowledge. In any society, individuals possess unique skills, knowledge, and perspectives that cannot be easily replicated or centralized. When power is concentrated in the hands of a few, it disregards the decentralized nature of human knowledge and expertise. A central authority cannot possibly have access to all the information needed to make the best decisions for every individual or situation. There are simply too many variables, too many factors to consider, and too many nuanced circumstances. The people at the top of a centralized system often lack the intimate knowledge of local conditions or personal needs that those directly involved in a particular situation have. As a result, the decisions made are often inefficient, blind to context, and detached from reality. This leads to mismanagement, shortages, and a failure to adapt to changing circumstances. The inefficiencies that arise from central control are compounded by the lack of competition and innovation. In a free market, competition drives efficiency and progress by encouraging individuals and businesses to innovate and improve. But in a system where the government controls all economic activity, there is little room for innovation. The lack of incentives for individuals to create or improve products and services leads to stagnation. The government-controlled economy becomes sluggish, unable to adapt to new challenges or embrace new opportunities. The concentration of power in a central authority not only leads to inefficiency, but also opens the door to corruption. Those at the top, with no accountability to people, can easily exploit their positions for personal gain. As history has shown, the more centralized the control, the greater the potential for abuse of power. This inherent inefficiency and corruption are what ultimately undermine any attempt to build a society based on communist or Marxist principles. Communism and Marxism fail because they ignore the natural hierarchies that emerge in human societies. These ideologies attempt to flatten the structure of society, eliminating distinctions based on talent, effort, or social role, under the misguided belief that such hierarchies are inherently oppressive. However, the reality is that hierarchies are a natural byproduct of human behavior, and they arise because people have different skills, aptitudes, and ambition. And this isn't a flaw or a corruption of human nature. It's an inevitable consequence of the way individuals interact and contribute to the collective well-being. Human societies are not static, they are dynamic, constantly evolving due to the differing capabilities of individuals. Some people will naturally rise to leadership positions because they possess unique talents or insights that others do not. Others will excel in different areas such as craftsmanship, science, or art, and the division of labor will reflect those capabilities. The natural emergence of hierarchies helps organize society in a way that allows for specialization, innovation, and progress. These hierarchies don't inherently lead to oppression. They can be a source of strength and efficiency when managed responsibly and ethically. Attempts to completely abolish hierarchies, as seen in Marxist and communist systems, ignore this fundamental truth. They fail to recognize that hierarchies are not just about power and control. They are a necessary mechanism through which people find their roles and contribute meaningfully to society. By disregarding the natural tendency for some to lead, innovate, or excel in specific fields, these ideologies create an artificial equality that is both unsustainable and damaging. The result is not a society where everyone thrives equally, but one where talent, initiative, and leadership are suppressed, leading to stagnation and resentment. In the absence of natural hierarchies, people are forced into rigid roles that are disconnected from their true capabilities and desires. This leads to inefficiency, frustration, and ultimately the collapse of the system. The failure of Marxism and communism to acknowledge and respect these inherent human structures is a key reason why these systems are doomed to fail. They attempt to create a society that denies the natural order of human interaction with disastrous consequences. Communism and Marxism fail because they concentrate power in the hands of a few, leading to inevitable corruption. These ideologies place their faith in central planning, assuming that a small group of individuals, typically the government or party elite, can control the vast complexities of an entire society. While the intent is to ensure equality and fairness, the centralization of power has historically resulted in the opposite. The concentration of power leads to its abuse. No matter how noble the initial intentions, when power becomes concentrated, it is almost always exploited. Human nature is such that people in positions of power often act in ways that serve their personal interests rather than the collective good. A central authority without checks and balances becomes prone to corruption because there is no system in place to hold the decision makers accountable. When the state controls all economic and social activity, the people at the top often use their positions to enrich themselves or advance their own agendas, leading to inequality rather than the equality the system promised. Moreover, a system that concentrates power in the hands of the few stifles accountability. In a free society with decentralized power structures, individuals and organizations are constantly held to account for their actions, either through public scrutiny, competition, or other means of self-regulation. But in a Marxist or communist system, accountability is centralized and often opaque. Those in power are not easily challenged, and the people have little recourse when the leaders act against their interests. This lack of accountability not only breeds corruption, but also breeds inefficiency, as those in charge are not incentivized to make the best decisions for the broader society. In the absence of competition and accountability, innovation is stifled. Leaders in a centralized system are less likely to take risks, as their positions are secure and their power unchallenged. The lack of competition leads to stagnation, as there are no incentives for improvement or progress. This system of centralization and control leads to the eventual breakdown of the society it was meant to improve, as it fosters an environment ripe for corruption, inefficiency, and stagnation. The reason communism and Marxism always fail lies in their denial of human diversity. These ideologies attempt to create a society where all individuals are treated exactly the same, with the same outcomes and opportunities, based on an idealized notion of equality. However, this approach fails to recognize the fundamental differences between people, their unique skills, aspirations, and motivations, which are intrinsic to human nature. When a system tries to suppress or eliminate these differences in pursuit of a rigid, one-size-fits-all vision of society, it not only ignores human complexity, but also stifles progress, creativity, and personal fulfillment. In every society, individuals vary widely in terms of abilities, inclinations, and interests. Some are naturally more suited to leadership, others to creativity, and still others to technical expertise. These differences are not only natural, but also valuable, as they allow societies to specialize, innovate, and evolve. When communism or Marxism seeks to erase these distinctions and force everyone into the same mold, it suppresses the very factors that drive human progress. A society that eliminates differences in roles and rewards based on personal qualities is one that stifles initiative and growth. Additionally, the assumption that everyone will be content with the same lifestyle or outcome is deeply flawed. People are not all motivated by the same things. Some pursue wealth, others seek meaning or personal satisfaction, and still others are driven by intellectual curiosity or the desire to help others. A system that treats all people as if they are interchangeable, ignores these differences, and treats individuals as mere components in a collective machine. The result is a society in which personal ambition and desire are suppressed, leading to frustration and dissatisfaction. When a government imposes strict uniformity, it eliminates the incentives that drive people to excel and improve. Without the opportunity to express individuality, contribute in unique ways, or be rewarded according to personal effort and achievement, people are left with little reason to innovate or strive for greatness. By denying the inherent diversity of the human experience, communism and Marxism stifle the very forces that lead to societal advancement and personal fulfillment. The failure of these systems to acknowledge human differences is another critical reason why they ultimately crumble under their own weight.